Society is currently operating on two completely different financial rulebooks, and the vast majority of the global population is entirely unaware that the second rulebook even exists. We are systematically taught from a very young age to go to school, get a secure job, work incredibly hard, save a small portion of our paycheck, and eventually retire when we are too old to enjoy our youth. This is the traditional script passed down through generations, and it feels incredibly safe. But while the middle class is obediently following this exact script, the wealthy are playing an entirely different game with fundamentally different rules. Today, we are going to expose the raw mechanics of this game by exploring 4 timeless financial principles that definitively separate the rich from everyone else. We will follow the distinct financial lives of 2 individuals, Arthur and Thomas. Both men are exactly 30 years old, both live in the same competitive metropolitan city, and both earn an identical, highly respectable corporate salary of exactly $6,000 a month. On paper, their starting lines are mathematically flawless and entirely identical. However, Arthur operates his entire life using the traditional middle-class mindset, while Thomas operates using the strategic mindset of the wealthy. By the time we reach the end of this comprehensive 20-year simulation, you will see exactly how 4 simple shifts in psychology create a massive, irreversible chasm in their net worth. Prepare to unlearn everything you thought you knew about money, because the modern financial system is precisely designed to reward those who understand its hidden mechanics. The first and most critical lesson involves the fundamental purpose of a job and how we value our own time. Arthur goes to work every single day driven by 2 invisible, devastating human emotions, fear and greed. He wakes up terrified of not being able to pay his rent or cover his upcoming credit card bills, so he rushes to his corporate office and works exhaustingly long hours. When his employer finally rewards him with a $1,000 monthly raise for his dedication, the second emotion, greed, instantly takes over his logic. He immediately imagines a nicer car, a bigger apartment, and premium vacations to show off to his peers. Arthur actively trades his finite, precious biological time for dollars, and the exact moment he stops working, his entire income stream violently drops to absolute zero. He is permanently trapped in the proverbial rat race, running faster and faster on a spinning wheel just to survive the rising cost of living. He genuinely believes that the only possible solution to his crippling financial anxiety is to secure a higher salary. Thomas, conversely, completely rejects the traditional concept of working strictly for money. Thomas goes to his corporate job not just to earn a paycheck to survive, but strictly to acquire initial capital and to learn vital business and leadership skills on his employer's dime. He understands a profound psychological truth. If you work for money, you hand all the power over to your employer. But if your money works for you, you keep the power and ultimately control your own destiny. When Thomas receives the exact same $1,000 monthly raise, he does not upgrade his lifestyle, buy a new designer wardrobe, or lease a depreciating luxury vehicle. Instead, he channels every single penny of that new extra income into a mechanical system that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely independent of his physical labor. He views every single dollar he earns as a tiny, highly trained employee. His only goal is to recruit as many of these invisible dollar employees as possible and send them out into the financial markets to capture even more dollars. Arthur completely exhausts his physical body to acquire money. Thomas uses his intellect to construct a mechanical system where his money works tirelessly to acquire his ultimate freedom. The second lesson is where the absolute greatest financial illusions are completely shattered, exposing the core reason why most people stay broke. The fundamental difference between the rich and the middle class comes down to a deceptively simple accounting definition. An asset is something that actively puts physical cash into your pocket, regardless of whether you are actively working, sleeping, or on vacation. A liability is something that actively takes physical cash out of your pocket every single month. The ultimate tragedy of the middle class is that they continuously purchase massive liabilities, but society and the banking system falsely convince them that they are actually buying assets. Let us look at the brutal mathematics of Arthur's life. Arthur saves up and proudly buys a beautiful, sprawling suburban house for $400,000, taking on a massive 30-year mortgage. He also buys a brand new $40,000 luxury car on a 5-year loan to signal his success to his neighbors. His banker shakes his hand and tells him his net worth just skyrocketed because he acquired 2 massive assets. But Arthur is mathematically bleeding to death. Every single month, his house aggressively extracts money from his bank account in the form of heavy mortgage interest, local property taxes, unexpected structural maintenance, and high insurance premiums. His shiny car aggressively depreciates in value the moment he drives it off the lot, while continuously extracting loan interest and mechanical repair costs. Cash is violently and continuously flowing out of his pocket. He is physically chained to his job because he must relentlessly service the monthly debt on these massive lifestyle liabilities. Thomas navigates the exact same economy, but he aggressively accumulates true cash-flowing assets. Instead of buying a massive suburban home to stroke his ego, Thomas purchases a modest, functional duplex for $300,000. He lives in one unit and rents out the second unit to a highly reliable tenant. The monthly rent from his tenant completely covers his mortgage payment, his property insurance, and his taxes, while leaving a $200 pure profit that flows directly into his pocket every single month. His core living expense is virtually eliminated. With his extra saved capital, he does not buy a depreciating luxury car. He buys a portfolio of blue-chip dividend-paying stocks and invests in a small stake in an automated local laundromat. Cash is constantly and reliably flowing into Thomas's pocket from multiple independent streams. Arthur is building a massive mountain of debt that requires his constant, stressful physical labor to maintain. Thomas is building a resilient mountain of cash-flowing assets that actively buy back his personal time and permanent freedom. The third financial principle addresses the massive, deeply ingrained confusion between a person's profession and their actual business. When you ask Arthur what his business is, he proudly puffs up his chest and says, "I am a senior marketing director at a major tech firm." But Arthur is deeply, fundamentally confused. Marketing is his profession, but it is absolutely not his business. Arthur spends 60 hours a week pouring all of his creative energy, extreme stress, and massive intellectual capacity into making the wealthy shareholders of his tech company even wealthier. He is the ultimate perfect corporate employee, but at the end of the day, when he logs off his computer and goes home, his own personal asset column is completely barren. He has spent his entire adult life diligently minding someone else's business while his own financial fortress remains completely unbuilt and vulnerable. If the tech firm decides to downsize tomorrow and terminate his contract, Arthur is left with absolutely nothing but a polished resume and sheer panic. Thomas, who also works as a marketing director at a similar firm, clearly understands the vital distinction. He knows that his day job is merely his profession. It is exactly how he pays his daily bills and temporarily funds his true financial operations. Thomas's actual lifelong business is his asset column. While Arthur spends his evenings watching streaming services or complaining to his friends about his boss, Thomas spends his evenings and weekends aggressively minding his own business. He uses his sharp marketing expertise to build a lucrative digital consulting agency on the side. He analyzes local real estate markets to find deeply undervalued commercial properties. He reads complex annual reports of companies he wants to acquire shares in. Thomas never loses sight of the fact that true generational wealth is only created when you legally own the underlying systems of production. He does not mind working hard at his day job, but he absolutely refuses to let his employer's business become the sole focus of his entire existence. By dedicating his free time to constructing his own robust asset column, Thomas is quietly building an impenetrable financial wall that will eventually render his corporate job entirely optional. The fourth and final rule is the ultimate multiplier of all wealth, the profound, unmatched power of deep financial literacy. The traditional educational system is incredibly effective at teaching people how to read, write, and perform complex calculus, but it intentionally teaches them absolutely nothing about how money actually functions in the real capitalist world. Arthur represents the absolute pinnacle of this systemic failure. He is a highly educated, articulate man, but he is fundamentally financially illiterate. When Arthur gets paid, the government aggressively takes exactly 35% of his gross income in various taxes before he even sees a single dollar in his account. Arthur then takes his remaining net income, pays his massive liabilities, and desperately tries to save whatever tiny fraction is left over. When the global economy experiences massive inflation, Arthur's basic savings account is completely decimated in purchasing power. He complains about the economy, blames the government, and relies entirely on generic financial advisors who charge him hidden management fees to put his money in mediocre, underperforming mutual funds. Arthur is playing a highly complex, high-stakes game completely blindfolded, constantly being tackled by economic forces he simply does not understand. Thomas understands that in the modern capitalist system, financial illiteracy is the most expensive and dangerous condition a human being can suffer from. Thomas dedicates hundreds of hours to mastering 4 distinct pillars of financial intelligence: accounting, investing, understanding markets, and the strict boundaries of the law. Because Thomas understands corporate law, he does not operate his investments simply as an individual employee. He establishes a formal limited liability company, an LLC, for his side businesses and real estate investments. This creates a massive legal and tax shield. The corporate tax structure allows Thomas to earn money, spend money on legitimate, legally approved business expenses like his phone, internet, and travel, and only pay taxes on the remaining profit. Arthur earns, gets aggressively taxed, and spends what is left. Thomas earns, spends, and gets taxed only on what is left. Furthermore, because Thomas understands market history and accounting, he can easily read a complex corporate balance sheet like a professional. When the stock market violently crashes and Arthur panic sells his retirement portfolio at a massive unrecoverable loss, Thomas accurately identifies deeply undervalued assets and buys them aggressively at a steep discount. Financial literacy is not just about aggressively making money. It is the impenetrable shield that completely prevents the government, the banks, and the volatile markets from legally stealing the money you have already made. Let us fast forward 20 years to examine the ultimate, brutal mathematical conclusion of these two entirely divergent mindsets. Both men are now 50 years old, entering the later stages of their lives. Arthur spent 2 full decades furiously working for money, accumulating massive lifestyle liabilities he falsely believed were assets, dedicating his life to minding his employer's business and completely ignoring his financial education. He is now a high-earning, respected executive, but he is completely exhausted. His massive suburban home requires constant, wildly expensive maintenance. His severe lifestyle inflation demands a massive monthly cash flow just to survive, and his tax burden is astronomically high. He looks incredibly successful on the outside, but if he were to stop working for just 3 months, his entire financial empire would violently collapse into total bankruptcy. He is a highly paid, deeply stressed prisoner of his own financial ignorance. Thomas, over those exact same 20 years, lived strictly by the rules of the wealthy. He aggressively forced his money to work for him, relentlessly acquired cash-flowing assets, strictly minded his own business, and fully mastered the complex legal and tax codes. Today, Thomas's robust asset column generates over $30,000 a month in purely passive income, dividends, real estate cash flow, and automated business profits. This massive passive income completely and effortlessly dwarfs his monthly living expenses. Thomas actually quit his corporate job 5 full years ago. He now spends his days exactly as he chooses, traveling the world, reading, and advising new startups for fun. He pays a significantly lower effective tax rate than Arthur, entirely legally, because the tax code aggressively rewards business owners and those who provide capital to the economy. The profound, ultimate difference between Arthur and Thomas was never about how much money they made at their corporate day jobs. It was entirely about how they fundamentally perceived the purpose of money itself. The modern financial machine will always mercilessly extract wealth from those who do not understand it and seamlessly transfer that wealth directly to those who do. You can consciously choose to be the person who exhausts their physical life working for a paycheck, or you can choose to be the brilliant architect who builds a machine that works for you. The rules of the wealthy are completely open, legal, and available to absolutely anyone willing to spend the time to learn them. The only question remaining is which specific rule book you will choose to aggressively play by for the rest of your life.